and he's playing a role. And in that role, he's been fine. That's how I would describe it.
Okay.
I mean,
maybe you're right. Maybe I set the expectations too high because I actually thought he was going to be a guy who was going to be able to put up some numbers. And a good morning, Eagles fans. It is a Birds 365 Thursday edition with your boys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Yes, it is the bye week, so we're not prepping or preparing for an opponent coming up over the weekend. We're just keeping an eye on where the Eagles are at. And Johnny Mac, to be truthful with you, maybe it's because the Eagles aren't even playing. I realized it was Thursday morning. And I had no idea who's playing who this weekend. Usually by Tuesday, after Monday Night Football,
you're all
Tuesday
caught
morning.
up, everybody's caught up in the baseball playoffs.
Me
kind
too.
of a big game for the Eagles tonight. Saints Cardinals, for the fact that the more the Saints lose, the better chance you have that top 10 pick. But yeah, I mean that's understandable. But that's one of the things about Philadelphia. Philadelphia is very provincial, Jody. They don't care what's going on with anybody else but their team.
But that's not me. But that is me this week. It's probably more baseball related than shoot the Flyers and Sixers playing. But I just I don't even know who's playing. So I went through some of the games. I got a couple of games I want to touch on with you. Since we don't have an Eagle game to talk about, we got plenty about the Eagles to get into, and that's where I want to start. Again, something that I didn't even realize. We'll give them a quick peek behind the curtain, or at least I will, on what I do to prep for Birds 365. The alarm goes off at 6:16. Get up, go out, have a bowl of cereal, get the dog out, sit in front of the computer, go to the websites I always go to. So I had a bunch of things on my little show list here that I have every single day before we start. And a name passed by me, and I said, I haven't talked about him. I haven't thought about him. I looked at the numbers and said, where is this guy been? Johnny Mac, is Milton Williams still on this team?
Because he almost got, there was that, not controversy, but did he block the field goal in Arizona? Did he get a finger on it? Did he Trayvon Hester the field goal? He didn't, which he, probably should have said he did. But whatever, he was very close to it, pushing. Yeah, I mean, Milton's a big part of this team, big part of the interior defensive line rotation. I think he's playing well. He's getting better. Still a young player, but yeah, I think Milton's been fine for the most part.
6 games, he's got 7 tackles. And it's not that I did double check this right before we came on the air. He's playing about 40% of the snaps. It's not like he's buried on the bench. He only got Nakobe Dean doesn't play any snaps from scrimmage. All he does is play special teams because he's behind 2 guys that are playing lights out football. Milton's in there on 40% of the defensive snaps, and he's got all of 7 tackles. You can look up the Pro Football Focus grades, which, oh, by the way, I looked at them this week for the Eagle game. Again, I'm perplexed. I don't understand how they grade. I looked at the end result, and it doesn't seem to add up the way they grade the Eagles out. But Milton Williams wasn't either a top 10 or a bottom 10 ranking from last week. But at least in the tackle production, a guy who plays inside and outside, and that's one of the reasons I would like Milton Williams and talked him up Blue Streak this offseason as they did, his flexibility and the ability to move around. Derek Barnett, who was a guy who, I said, why the hell did the Eagles bother re-signing him? Ends up going down with an injury, so he's not taking snaps away from Milton Williams. The numbers haven't been there. You're telling me, he's playing well. I haven't seen it. How do we know that he's playing well other than the Eagles coach?
Well, I don't, I think he's been fine. And as a young player, he's getting better.
I'll stop you right there. How do we know that Milton Williams is getting better? Because it's not.
Well, first of all, let me say, first of all, I will say it's not me in stats and football, but because of the way the Eagles play defense, and Jordan Davis is a better example of this, and I've been talking about it since they drafted him. I was worried about it because he's not supposed to get tackles. He's supposed to tie up blockers so TJ Edwards and Kaiser White can flow to the football. And, I mentioned that word, I know, a number of times, esoteric. I don't know if it's too esoteric. I think there's a lot of smart football fans who understand it. But, a lot of people are caught up in statistics, and, he's not playing, and he hasn't played outside much. He's, they haven't needed him. So he's mainly played he's been on the interior. So, they call it a gap and a half. It's not two gap in the Big Fangio defense. He's trying to muck things up so TJ Edwards and Kaiser White can flow to the football. So he's not going to be generating massive stats. Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the film, and he's been fine. He's not been great by any stretch of the imagination, but as a young player, still getting better. And by the way, he's been hurt as well, fighting through a bit of an injury. He's been fine. He's still a solid player who's got an upside.
He hasn't missed any games. So what injury is it that supposedly
he banged up his knee early in the season, and he's been playing through it. It's a lot of guys are banged up. A lot of guys play.
But here's why I don't buy that, John. Like I said, I just crunched numbers before the show started. He's playing 40% of the snaps. If he's injured and he's not quite 100%, why they put him out there at 40% of the snaps? He's a backup defensive tackle, and I get it. They rotate everybody. They like that fresh bodies in there, but 40% is a pretty big number. He's playing more snaps than Jordan Davis is, and he doesn't have the tackles that Jordan Davis, and you correctly stated it, that's not really even his job. If he doesn't get tackles, but he's doing everything else and he's occupying guys and other players make him play, that's what Jordan Davis does, and he's very good at it. He's got more tackles than Milton Williams, playing less snaps. I just, other than that, yeah, did he get his finger on the blocked the kick in Arizona? When I watch Eagles and I'm not getting the coach's game tape thereafter to break down, he just hasn't made any plays this year.
Well, number one, he's not, what do we think of Milton Williams? I mean, he's a third-round pick in his second year. He doesn't have the skill set of Jordan Davis. So if we're going to compare him to Jordan Davis, even though he's farther along, you're probably going to be disappointed. I mean, Jordan Davis is, from a physical perspective, at least, the so-called unicorn. I mean, he's not Jordan Davis. I'll be the first in line.
So why is he playing more snaps than Jordan Davis?
Well, because he's early in the season he was playing more, and then lately hasn't been playing more, and that's part of their plan with Jordan Davis to ramp him up. He is a rookie. He's learning the defense. He's learning a new scheme. And, hopefully that continues to trend in a positive direction. We were talking, forget about Milton early in the season. Marlon Tuipulotu was playing more than Jordan Davis, and everybody was up in arms. So, obviously they have a plan to bring Jordan Davis along. It's not, they have kind of a luxury because of Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, who know how to play on the interior. They're very deep on the interior, and they rotate these 5 different guys. So, Jordan's I would imagine, is going to continue to inch up, and they're going to continue to inch down a little bit, both Marlon and Milton, because Jordan's just the more talented, gifted player. But they're going to be part of it. And I think, it depends what you're looking for. Yeah, if you're expecting to be Milton Williams to be a splash player, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you're expecting that, well, you should be angry at yourself. I mean, he's a role player, and he's playing a role, and in that role, he's been fine. That's how I would describe it. Okay. I mean,
maybe you're right. Maybe I set the expectations too high, because I actually thought he was going to be a guy who was going to be able to put up some numbers. And I get it. Defensive lineman numbers could be misleading. But I thought this could be a step-up year for Milton Williams. And for me, at best, it's a flat year off what he did as a rookie this year compared to what he did as a rookie last year. It's compared to what he's done so far this year.
Well, right now he's the 4th defensive tackle. He's, as I said, he hasn't played much at all outside because they haven't needed him, because Brandon Graham is back playing at a high level, and they've done a great job with Brandon as far as limiting his reps. And I think, talk about PFF, man, Brandon, I think last I looked, he was 3rd.
Yeah, he got a big rating this past week.
3rd or 4th amongst edge rushers, so he's playing at a really high level. Hassan Reddick is killing it. Josh Sweat is playing well, and I haven't needed him to play outside. Maybe they will down the road, and that versatility will help. Again, we're talking about the 8th defensive lineman on this team, 7th or 8th. I mean, that's pretty darn good. If number 7 or 8 on your team is Milton Williams, that's pretty good. So I guess it depends on what prism you're looking at it through. If he's number 2, then you got issues. If he's number 8, number 7, that's pretty good.
Here's the prism I'm looking at, and just kind of challenging the numbers you just give out. He's the 8th defensive lineman. The 8th defensive lineman on the Philadelphia Eagles and every other football team in the NFL plays. If you're the 5th cornerback on a team, guess what? You ain't seeing the field. The cornerbacks stay out there and play 100%, 95%, 90% of the snaps. Guys are coming in and out of the lineup on the defensive line on a play-in, play-out basis in the NFL. So being the 8th guy isn't like you're sitting on the bench and rooting your guys home.
And that's why
you're
I said
actually
he's a
getting
role
out there onto the field.
He's a role player. He's a pretty good role player. I don't get, Patrick Johnson had the concussion issue. He kind of bumped up a bit, a little surprised over Teron Jackson to be that 4th sort of defensive end edge rusher. And we'll see how if he gets going. If you want to be disappointed with a young player, it would probably be Teron Jackson, because I thought he would be the guy that would step in. And he's kind of been lapped by Patrick. If people thought Milton Williams was going to be a star, I get it. He's not a star. I don't know if he's ever going to be a star. But as a role player, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's me there. Whereas every year you do this, you look at guys going into their 2nd season, because it's NFL historically pretty much proven out that's a big year of progress. Rookies are rookies. You got to get used to the speed. A lot of times in your 2nd year, you can make a pretty big jump. And I thought that was coming from Milton Williams this year, and it hasn't shown itself yet. Now, we're 1/3 slightly more than 1/3 of the way through the season. And hey, they get an injury this week. Milton snaps go up, maybe does flash, but shame on me. I hadn't realized that Milton had produced. Now you can argue production again. Johnny Mack, not the biggest stats fan, specifically of NFL defensive linemen, but he hasn't produced much for me. All right, maybe that one is on me more than anything else. All right, you mentioned the Thursday night game tonight, Saints Cardinals. The Eagles already have beaten the Cardinals out in Arizona, and they get the Saints later in this year. They have that 1st-round draft pick. Are we going to have another stinker of a Thursday night game? The last 2 have been almost unwatchable because of lack of offense. And neither one of these 2 teams is an offensive juggernaut right now, Johnny Mack.
I think the Cardinals might be on the verge of breaking out offensively. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be back, right? Where are we? 6-7 game. Yeah.
I think it's next week. I got to double check that.
I got to double check that as well.
Again, I didn't even know who was playing until
all right. Maybe if he's not back this week, maybe I'll hold off a week on that prediction. But because they lost Hollywood Brown, he's going to be out for a while. So,
But a big addition this week in the former Temple wide receiver. That's huge for them. Robbie Anderson right up to speed, right into the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. This is not, again, I use the baseball would be the easiest because it's a baseball playoffs, but you can trade for a baseball player at the trade deadline and put him in the lineup. If it's a position player, all right, he's hitting third, he's hitting fourth, he's hitting seventh, whatever, he's hitting first. It's batter against pitcher. They could have an immediate impact. It's just about going out and doing your specific job. With football, Robbie Anderson's not going to be relevant for weeks, if ever,
right,
for the Arizona Cardinals.
All right, since you went there, let's let me follow up. And we got two good guests coming your way today. Brandon Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation, going to jump aboard in the next 5 or 6 minutes. And then a little later, Sheil Kapati. We haven't had Sheil on in a while. Has covered the Eagles for several different outlets, is doing a lot of things for the Ringer these days, but certainly still has a Philly bent to his writings and podcastings. So Sheil a little bit later. Trade deadline. NFL's trade deadline is now 11 days away, somewhere thereabout. Not this upcoming Tuesday, but the Tuesday thereafter. The NFL has actually, in my opinion, done a nice job of pushing back the trade deadline. You and I have been following this league long enough to remember when the NFL trade deadline was like September 20th. They played 3 games, and they said, all right, make up your mind. Do you want to make a trade? You want to give up a draft pick and think that you're in it this year? They really didn't even care. And I think a lot of it had to do with what you just pointed out. You can't get the guy up to speed quick enough. That it takes time for you to be able to incorporate somebody. So they figured the only way you can get a guy and actually have production is give him a whole 3 quarters of the season to get ready. Yeah, but then teams weren't making trades. Nobody was trading anybody. There was, in comparison to the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL trade deadline was a non-entity. People didn't look at it. They didn't care about it. Nothing really happened that changed the significance of the season thereafter. They've wisely pushed it back into a middle of the season type deal now, and it's November 1st this year. First time, by the way, I ever remember it being November because the season started late, so everything's been pushed back this year. Eagles going to do anything? Should the Eagles do anything? I know we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but as we get a little bit closer to it, Howie Roseman burning the phones this week to try and figure out someone to add to this Eagle roster?
Yeah, I'm sure he is. By the way, real quick, DeAndre Hopkins is scheduled to be back tonight, so maybe that helps the Cardinals out a little bit. So just wanted to insert that. With Howie, look, Howie likes doing stuff. One of the things you brought up, the old school mentality, there are a lot of newer GMs who think a little bit differently and are more willing to roll the dice with players in season, because you're right. In the old days, they're like, well, I can't get this guy up to speed, so I don't care. I need him in my program. I need him in training camp. I need him this. But they used to practice more. They used to do things. Now things are a little bit more simplified. So there are more open-minded GMs, more open-minded coaches about getting people involved. I would include Howie in that category. He likes, obviously, to make moves. He's made moves in the past. Some have worked. Everybody points to J.J. Some have not. Nobody points to Golden Tate because it didn't work. I don't want – I've said it pretty consistently, and I'll continue to say it. I don't want to mess with this team as far as the key components of this team. I think something special is developing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the chemistry and the connection. Now, you can do your homework and figure out if somebody will fit in. But then the second point of that, Jody, is what do they need? All right. I mean, if you can get me a starting level safety, all right, maybe I'll think about it. But why is anybody trading a starting level safety? The Eagles have been in the market for safety since the offseason when they tried to get Marcus Williams. They finally got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's been okay and is getting better and better and better and makes plays. He's already made a bunch of plays, even though he hasn't been consistent or the best tackler in the world. So other than that, what do they need? What do they need? We just talked about Milton Williams as the 7th or 8th defensive lineman. I mean, can you get better than Milton Williams? I don't know at that level. Could they use a better backup tight end? Probably, but everybody could use a backup better tight end almost. Tight end is a black hole in this league, especially when you get
Cowboy
to the
backup tight ends made a couple plays last week.
Yeah, that's true. Eagles. That's true. Maybe they could swim. Well, they're not swinging a deal with Dallas, but they did. And by the way, that when guys get a chance, maybe they get more of an opportunity to show something. But I don't know what they need. And it's certainly, if they do need something, it's probably a special teams player. It's probably a returner or a coverage guy, Chris Maragos type. All right, if they can pull that off, great. But as far as relevance, as far as somebody who plays on Sundays on offense or defense, I don't think they need anything.
Same here. And even the one position you point to, starting safety, a guy who's that much better, the day you acquire him, you just look at it and go, all right, well, he's got to get inserted into the starting lineup. I don't think that type of safety is going to be available. And number two, I'm perfectly fine with the 2 starting safeties. Now, depth, yeah, I'd like to add a better depth piece who would be just behind Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Epps at the safety position. But I'm not looking to supplant either one of those guys. I'm good with their level of play at both safety positions. I just think they could certainly use a guy who steps in as number 3 guy if you have a major injury to either of your 2
I agree with that, and that's what I talk about. I mean, Kayvon Wallace, we got a short taste of Kayvon Wallace, who is a wonderful guy, but it was not good. Yeah, you start thinking about, well, what if Marcus Epps gets dinged up or Chauncey gets dinged up? That could be a serious issue. And so that's why I say, depth or special teams. Yeah. If Howie can uncover somebody. But as far as Christian McCaffrey or Brian Burns and everybody, the big name trap, as Joe Banner calls it. No, I don't want any of that.
Agreed. And they did show their the need for it with Kayvon's play. Didn't play hideously bad. He didn't get eaten alive. Pretty sure as hell didn't make any plays this past week. The 2 guys could turn him back the clock. I thought it is this morning too. And you're there every single day, all the practices, and 2 guys we thought might need to step up and play this year. Kayvon Wallace has gotten a chance, hasn't done it. The other one was Davion Taylor. Is he still on the practice squad?
Yeah.
We've so infrequently mentioned his name. I can't even remember the last time Davion Taylor made a play in either a game, a preseason game.
No, he hasn't been elevated yet, but he's on the practice squad.
Okay.
So he's, that's actually, when you talk about the 69 with the Eagles at 70, because they have Matt Leo. That's pretty good depth as well to have Davion Taylor on your practice squad. But, it's not relevant until you need him.
Exactly. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald with the Mac Birds 365, guys. Like I mentioned, we got 2 good guests today. Next hour, we'll punch up Sheil Kapadia. But coming up next, our buddy BLG from BGN. That would be Brandon Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation. He's going to hop aboard with us here on Birds 360.